All right, welcome back to Talking with Filip, and in Slovakia, where it's 3 a.m. And I made bourbon B, so it's right here. It's ready to
Mm.
go. Um, so I know it's late there. I know you're tired, so I'll try to. Maybe we'll just do an abbreviated part here, 15 minutes or something. Unless you want to go longer. So-
As long as you need, like, I'm okay.
All right.
Shoot us.
Okay. Um, what do you think about well, I guess I want to try to do you ever feel like a brain in a vat?
A what? A
A
brain?
brain in a vat?
I don't know what it means.
Okay, never mind. How about this one? What would you call your mom's sister's daughter?
Well, my cousin.
And what would you call your Okay, that's good enough. Just curious. Um,
Okay.
so here, let me update my chart here. I'm gonna just see what's remaining here, because like I want to tell you what my theory is, but I also want to make sure that I don't
Need more clues.
skip ahead. Well, it's just
Yeah.
like sometimes I'm really pretty sure, like really soon, but like I don't. It might not be fair. You know what I mean? So I want to be as fair as I can and make sure that I dig around enough um, to be fair. So hold on one second. Oops. There you go. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I know what type you are. But I guess I'll just go ahead and tell you what type I think you are, and then you can tell me. I'll write it down here, and you can tell me what you got or what you thought it was, and then we can talk about it. How about that? So,
Yeah.
to me, it's pretty
Sure.
obvious, but you might be like, oh, well, obviously, or the viewers at home might even be like, well, obviously. So I'm holding it like this because I wrote here. I'm just gonna scratch out the stuff I wrote on the other side. All right, there's the scribbled side. My guess is not INFJ. Um, so, all right. So, go ahead. Tell me what it was.
Well, for me, the most common type, the results were INTP.
That would be what I guessed as well. I think we both probably knew that was gonna be what happens. But yeah. So I guess do you are there any things that have caused you to think maybe you're not for some reason?
Um, Sometimes I had doubts that I was objective enough about data I collected and
Yeah,
things I learned,
which is
and
exactly what
about
an
people.
INTP would do.
And yeah, I know, and they have this like imposter syndrome or
Yeah,
something like that. Like,
yeah,
and people often talk about it, that they're pretty smart and or good at math, and I am
right,
actually good at math.
right.
But sometimes when I can't figure out something so quickly, I just start to doubt myself. Like, am I really good
Am
at
I
it?
am I an ISFP after all?
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I think I don't. It doesn't have anything to do with how smart you are, but I mean INTPs are kind of according to the whatever research whatever research that the MBTI people are doing is it has INTP at the among the higher levels of general intelligence or whatever. But yeah, I mean, everyone's different, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
so
somewhere I saw that ENFPs are the when you try to see when you meet a genius, he's most likely an ENFP, but it's also
interesting.
because of his representation in population, because there's more ENFPs percentage of ENFPs than
Hmm.
INTPs or INTJs.
Hmm. Plus, I mean, you have to factor in all the different kinds of intelligence too. You know, I think
Yeah.
that's just gets overlooked so often. You know, and yeah, there's some really brilliant people out there that wouldn't be considered brilliant on paper, but have musical brilliance or athletic brilliance or emotional brilliance, and so I think in fact, I think this is gonna sound like very dogmatic for me to say this, but I think everyone has some level of brilliance in them, but it's just it may be hidden away in some way, or and even someone you might think is intellectually bankrupt probably has a strong understanding of the human experience, at least. You know what I mean?
No, no,
So
I actually agree. Like everyone is born with a big potential. I think most people at least are born with the potential to be really good at something.
yeah, yeah. So it's about trying enough things that you can find those things that you have the
Yes,
aptitude for, and once you hit those, you'll know it's like jackpot. You're like, yeah, I'm good at
it's
this.
about the environment since you're a child. I guess it plays a big part.
Right. And I think if anyone's watching this too, I would and you as well. And I say this to myself, but you know, try lots of things because you never know when you're gonna find. You know, like I started learning guitar when I was 28. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
for whatever reason, I just never picked it up before that. And I picked it up and I was like, oh, I can do this. You know, this isn't bad. Um, but I wouldn't have known if I wasn't willing to take that risk of being bad at it. Basically,
Yeah.
um,
You still play?
I play from time to time. Yeah, it's not, it's more of a I do it more of out of enjoyment than
Yeah,
performance. You know,
yeah, sure.
like to hear myself making the noises and like playing songs and writing songs and things. It's satisfying. What about you? Do you perform at all, or do you just mostly play for yourself or for your own learning?
Mostly for myself. I had some performances, and I had a band, but we didn't perform together. They didn't have time to practice, and
Mm.
it wasn't going anywhere. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a bit disappointing.
Ah, well, I don't know. Maybe we're not that far away from VR and AR getting good enough that someday you can join a band virtually.
Yeah. Well, I hope one day I can find a good band where everyone likes on the same level or on a similar level.
Yeah, yeah,
Level.
yeah. Yeah, you know what? I don't know if you've seen there's this band join community websites where you can get on and be like, I'm a drummer, I'm a bass guitarist. Try to find other people to jam with, you know.
Yeah. I use it on Facebook and just around.
Yeah.
I frequently check on the internet
Hmm.
around my town if there are some bands.
Nice.
But now during Corona, it's like
I know
it's harder.
that's
So
why I was saying VR because I'm like this
yeah,
might be the new normal. I don't know. Like we don't know how long this is gonna go. It could go for quite a number of years before everyone feels safe again. So, and who knows? We might get hit by something else, right? In 3 years, it's some other. I've heard that these things are going to become more common. So, I don't know.
well, they mutated on animals and
Right.
maybe may change in the future as well. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even if you could invent technology to do 3D printing and try to solve scarcity, you would still have a lot of people eating animals and like killing animals and processing and selling them on marketplaces, and there would still be that transfer of bacteria, whatever, transfer of viruses. It's almost inescapable. Um, so I don't know. I guess we just have to build better technology, continue to build better technology to combat it. Probably like nanomachines. That'll be it.
no, I don't know much about animation, so I don't know how
Nanomachines,
they will
son.
work.
It's a meme.
Quantum, like
It's a
every
meme.
second science fiction movie.
Quantum.
Yeah.
Quantum
just
nanomachines?
yeah.
Who
Just
knows?
use the word quantum and you're
Right.
smart already.
Quantum AI nanomachines. Throw in a few more buzzwords in there. So let me ask you this: what do you think is unique about being an INTP that other people don't experience? What should other types understand about being an INTP that you could share with the viewing audience?
Um, what I saw in comparison to other peers or just people I know, for most of them,
Well,
I take
yeah.
my time to make a decision or an opinion about something,
Mhm.
and sometimes I feel like I'm pushed to make a decision on time, but I'm a bit afraid to make something a wrong decision that I would just I would just have to change later.
Mhm.
Even if it's not like something serious, I don't like to change opinions, or
Fair enough.
sometimes I'm afraid to
Mhm.
say out my opinion loud because I'm afraid that later I would just find the new insight on the thing and have to change it.
I see. I see. So you don't like to feel locked in by whatever you've just said, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want anyone to be able to come back and say you said that.
Yeah, I don't like that. Like I do have people like close friends and family like where I'm not afraid to say something
Mhm.
and I'm okay with being wrong or corrected,
Mhm.
but it's still a bit like uncomfortable.
Mhm. Mhm. So, what's something that people who have INTPs in their life can know to have a better relationship with an INTP?
um, Maybe just allow them to share your insights with them and don't be so fast paced
Mhm.
about some things.
Mhm.
Maybe they will appreciate it. Like I do have some friends when I point out some things they haven't considered, and they are glad that I did
Mhm.
when we make a decision.
Mhm. Mhm.
So more people could be like that.
Mhm. Mhm. So maybe appreciate the thoughtfulness that the INTPs have, which is they're
Mm.
very thoughtful about everything.
Yes, I guess.
And I don't know, have you talked to INFJs before at all?
My my. I don't think I have talked to INFJ. The closest I have gotten to INFJ is my girlfriend who's ENFJ,
Mhm.
but those cognitive functions are switched, so
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know how close it is to INFJ actually.
Well, I'm an INFJ, so ask me anything. If you have any questions, I always let whoever I'm talking to.
Uh, well, I do have about those cognitive functions, how they are stacked in their order. Like for me, it's
Mhm.
T I N E S
Mhm.
I F E,
Mhm.
and when you make a cognitive function test or something, like does it always have to be in that order, or does it always have to be those four functions that you have in your function stack? For example, why couldn't I have on the last, for example, T I N E S E and F E, for example?
I thought of a good metaphor to explain this. Um, let's imagine that your cognitive stack was muscle groups on your body. So let's imagine
Hmm.
that TI was your biceps, and NE is your forearms,
Yeah.
and SI is your your thighs, and FE is your calves, and then to test you for your physical ability, I ask you to kick this log. So you go and you kick that log, but what you're really doing is only you're kind of manifesting some order of the muscles in some way. So I would have to. So if my request for you to kick that log was very specific, that favored certain muscles, I might see certain muscles movements more than others because I've that's what I've tested for. So the reality is someone would have to watch you kick a whole bunch of logs and with both legs and maybe both arms and watch you do a bunch of other stuff too. And that's really what I do when I'm trying to type somebody is I want to ask a whole bunch of different kinds of questions. Some of them related to You might have to. I might get a hunch that you that I want to know how quickly you can intuit certain kinds of things, or I want to know your your tendencies towards other people in certain ways. But I won't ask things as specifically as kick that log. Probably what I'll ask is something like, what could you do to that log over there to cause it some damage? And then I'll just see how you go about doing that.
Yes, yeah.
And then
That's
based on how you do that, I will try to understand some kind of patterns there. And that's not something the
yes.
test can easily do, really.
I like this better because some tests are so obvious. Like, and
Right.
you could literally like put a question like, um, are you smart or are you dumb? So you
Right,
feel
right. I am smart. I'm so smart.
like it's obvious you're gonna
INTP.
pick that one.
No, but yeah, you know what? I have actually tried. This is the funny part of it. I've actually tried to create a test that was fair before, and I struggled because there were like a handful of types that, for some reason, because of my type, I have a hard time identifying those types. So that's tricky for me. I mean, I think I've identified them in person, but I have more time to kind of try to. I can sniff it out a whole bunch of different ways. You know what I mean? Like, could be
Yeah.
could be a logic question, could be an emotional question. I could be watching their body language, or it could be. So I'll just use whatever thing in the toolbox that I know I could possibly use, and that's an advantage you don't have when you're writing a test where you have to like everything is about language and about how things are worded, and is the person reading this going to interpret it this way or that way, and so are they native English speaker? Like that can have a difference. There's so many things that can have a difference, make a difference on the test result. So that's sort of the problem with typology tests. It's one of the problems, I guess. Yeah, I mean, there's a number of
Yes,
them.
that's the main reason I chose to do this.
Yeah,
Like to have this goal.
there's a number of there's a number of inherent problems with typology tests that are very hard to get around. That's why I've actually thought about, is it possible to create like a visual, like an image based typing test where I could use, you know what I mean, like how researchers will put images in front of people and then test their responses and stuff
Yes.
in their brains. So I was wondering, like, what if there were images that you could put in front of different types and they would select that image and that would tell you something. But the challenge with that is, it assumes its own existence, kind of. You know what I mean? It assumes that typology exists and that there are objective types, and that I could know your type. I could know your type and say, oh, you're an INTP, and then I could have you pick a bunch of things and say, well, INTPs do that because maybe I get a bunch of INTPs to do it. But I've assumed that I'm right about your type to make that model. So I've assumed its own existence. I've assumed the model's existence to make the model.
Yes, even
Is a
those
circular
tests
problem.
where you have to point this question like neutral, agree a bit, disagree, and that, and like different types would maybe have different answers. Like some would say strongly agree and strongly disagree, but they would mean it differently in their head.
Right.
Like maybe they would be
Right.
a bit doubtful like me,
Right.
so they wouldn't go strongly disagree, and you
Right.
also have to take that into account. So
Yes. Yes. That's why I think that's why I don't like the agree, strongly disagree, whatever kind of paradigm, because it is so subjective what that means.
they
Yeah,
everyone explains it differently to
Right.
themselves. Yeah.
Right. Whereas something like automatic brain response to an image or something is far, you can't game that, because that's just your body's like automatic response. So yeah, I mean, it's really, honestly, when it comes to personality, if somebody, you can only really do it if you can get them to be subconscious, if you can get them to not interfere with the process somehow through a conscious decision, because if they can, then they can change it in any number of ways. So the best way is to talk to somebody, just have a conversation with them and listen.
Yes, this is the best way.
Listen to the natural thing. Like, people will tell me what they are. They will try to tell me what they are through what they're saying, but I'm listening to what they're not saying. I'm listening to what's going on between the lines of what they're saying. and that's helping
Uh,
me get there.
can I have one more question?
Yeah, you
Like,
can ask as many questions as you want. That's fine. I
I'm just
am.
curious.
Yeah, I still got bourbon.
Yeah. Uh, like, what were some clues that you picked up during our conversation that may have led to your decision that have led to your conclusion that I am INTP, that I wasn't talking, just were between the lines?
Right. Well, okay. So there's gonna be like, this is the weird part of being an INFJ is that I'm firmly grounded in reality, and I'm also firmly grounded in fantasy. So, um, you're gonna get some very contradictory things out of me. But I will say, so basically, I'm using my intuition. So I'm listening to objective and subjective things that I can identify. So I'm listening to how you're saying things, but I'm also listening to what you're saying, and I'm also comparing what you're saying. Well, I'm comparing what you're saying to the model that's in my head of that I've built. So, um, it's an algorithm, so to speak. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm basically both comparing you to my algorithm and updating my algorithm at the same time as I listen to you. And so that's such a fuzzy thing to say, I guess. Um, but I guess that what I'm listening to is some clues for me is your cadence of speaking, um, the amount that you say when you speak, um, what you talk about in your response, how direct you are, how indirect you are. Um, I'm listening to the emotional content of what you're saying. Is it detached? Is it emotional? Um, I'm listening to. I'm listening for obvious cognitive functional markers, kind of. I'm listening for like things that you might say, or I'm listening. I'm trying to, in a sense, I'm taking in what you're saying in real time as it's happening, and trying to be as objective as I possibly can about what you're saying, and comparing everything you're saying to everything else that you're saying, and try to see if I can identify patterns in how you word things and what you say, what you don't say, um, and theories about why I think that you're saying certain things. Um, like for example, when you said that you were interested in the are you INTP versus ENTP, obviously my intuition's gonna go, oh, he thinks he's an INTP or an ENTP. Like that's the first thing I think. I think anyone would probably, but maybe me more specifically. That's just something I'll just take note of. But I also won't say, oh, that must mean he's an INTP or an ENTP. That just means, oh, that's one thing to think about, among many other things I'm going to think about.
Erased possibility.
It's a possibility. And the reason I think that's an important piece of the puzzle is because I think to myself, well, if he was interested in that, that means he must have been thinking about a bunch of other things related to that. So that means he must have manifested certain things in his personality that he resonates with, and that means that I might be on the right track to think about that in that way. So, so then it becomes a possible theory, and now I have to try to disprove it. So it's easier. It's easier if I have a theory that I'm going to try to disprove than it is for me to start completely from scratch. So, so if you send me in a certain direction, then it can be helpful, even if it's not even if it doesn't end up being where I ended up. Sometimes where I end up is exactly where I started. But that's intuition, baby.
It could be interesting trying to see things that way.
Well, this is the funny thing about the difference in how INTPs and the INFJs operate is INTPs I've noticed, because I have friends who are INTPs. I have some friends that I've dated an INTP, and I've dated two INTPs, and uh, well, they're just absolutely terrified of conclusiveness of any kind. And like it's like trying to stab Jello. It's like just fucking commit to anything, literally anything. No, it's not gonna happen. So, and whereas the opposite for me, INFJs are conclusive about literally everything. But I think because INFJs use introverted thinking, I think they're willing to open up the possibility of being wrong at any given turn, even if they're so dogmatic about it. So that's really the paradoxical nature of being an INFJ, is a stubborn openness or
Yeah,
something like that.
I
It's
know
like,
what you're trying to say.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna be pretty dead set on a theory that I have, but you could turn me on it, like if what you have to say makes sense and if it's reasonable to me. You might turn me. You might turn me right away. I might change my mind a lot faster than other people would if I can be convinced in a reasonable way.
Yeah.
Then I'll be reasonable and I'll turn my opinion around.
Mm.
And
I've experienced similar things with my girlfriend. Like she was so conclusive, but and she seemed like she wouldn't even change her mind for anything.
right,
But then, from nowhere, it came like, okay, I guess we could try this.
yeah. ENFJs are they're harder to reason with than INFJs a little bit. They'll be they'll put more walls up. I've noticed uh, to that reasoning than INFJ. But you don't know because you haven't interacted with
I don't know. I
INFJs,
can't
right?
compare it
Yeah,
to other
yeah,
INFJs. So
yeah. I mean, both ENFJs and INFJs can both be very very stubborn about certain things. Like about you wouldn't even know what the things they're going to be stubborn about are, because you won't know until it happens.
yeah,
Because the thing they're stubborn about is some weird intuition that they had like 3 years ago that changed their mental model, and now they believe it very strongly, and you just happen to run up against it because whatever reason, you just happen to find it. And now you realize, oh, they have this really strongly held belief about something. And then the weird thing about that is you might find that it actually was unfounded, and the initial trigger that caused it was a misunderstanding, and you can completely change that in that person. Um, an INFJ is probably more likely to be willing to change their mind in that situation because they don't want to be wrong.
yeah. That's nice at
They're kind
least.
of dead set
Like
on
better.
not being wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so I think INFJs can be pretty reasonable, but you definitely. I'll also say this is like it's just not very probably likely. Well, actually, I will say this: you could probably change an INFJ's mind faster than you can change an INTJ's mind. I don't know if do you know any INTJs at all?
I'm not sure if I've ever met an INTJ.
Okay. Well, they're probably they have a lot of the same stubbornness that INFJs have, but uh, under stress they can be kind of irrational and difficult to convince. Whereas I found that other INFJs, can be convinced, but the way to do it is like you kind of have to present your case. You might convince them on the spot, but if you can't, just present your case and then give them time to work it out, and they'll figure it out because they're thinking about it all the time. They're thinking about everything all the time. That's the life of an INFJ, thinking about everything all the time.
Well, when I compare myself to an INFJ now, I feel like I'm thinking only about half the things. Like when you even mentioned those signs that you were looking for, it seemed so obvious that my speech and the things I said and I didn't say, it seems so obvious now that you said it, but I actually don't pay attention to those things when I talk to different people. It's not like natural to me. But when someone points it out, it feels like it's so obvious. Why was I like that? Why didn't I say that from the start?
I think it's actually extroverted feeling. Extroverted feelers have a hard time. Like, I'll just tell you about myself. Like, to me, like before I discovered a typology and was able to kind of dig in more, I always just kind of saw myself as like this negative pocket of nothing, and then there's just like everything else. And knowing your own feelings and your own sense of identity is challenging for certain types. And I think INFJs and ENFJs, and I've even seen ENTPs. Sorry, I said ENFJs. ENFJs have that problem too. INTPs, ENTPs, INFJs, and ENFJs, I would say, all share a similar problem of difficulty regarding themselves, if I could say it that way. Difficulty factoring themselves into the equation, or something like that. Because you're so focused on your fairness of the data, I guess, that you don't want to sully it with your own, you don't want to dirty it up with your own feelings about it, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah.
So I can get left behind in relationships and things, in a sense, because of that, if I'm not careful, because I'm not regarding myself. I'm not thinking about what do I want, or like, what's my role in this whole thing, you know?
Sometimes I get this illusion. But I'm not sure if it's illusion or it's real. Like when I think about objective data, I sometimes think it's what I want, but I'm not really sure sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an extroverted feeling problem. So, how do you solve that, or how do you resolve that?
Actually, I just try to relax or do something like totally different from my usual routine.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to music, play,
Mm-hmm.
maybe go cycling or just out for a walk alone.
And that sort of reframing is what helps you see things differently.
Yes, and actually talking about different topics. For example, even talking with my girlfriend or something. I'm glad actually that she's an ENFJ.
Yeah.
Because it expands my vision a lot.
Right. She's probably way more dogmatic than you are.
I think we got pretty even
Really?
over the time.
Even level? Yeah, that's right. You're probably... Yeah, I could see that.
We spent so much time together that it just sort of like...
That's a pretty good fit. I think that's a pretty good fit, ENFJ and INTP. I could see how that would work really well. INFJs and ENTPs also work out really well. But I could see how having one of the two being an extrovert could be a really good thing for the relationship. If there's one extrovert, just because. Well, I mean, I don't know anything about you, but the INTPs I've dated can get pretty reclusive. They did get pretty reclusive at times and wanted to just withdraw. And yeah.
Wait, I'm gonna translate what is reclusive.
What's it? Reclusive. Yeah, it's like withdrawn pulling back, pulling away, just wanting to be alone basically. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it can be challenging for INFJs and ENFJs and some other types who thrive a lot more on emotional connection and will be hurt more if there's withdrawal by their partner. So, but I think an ENFJ would be more likely than an INFJ to sort of pull the INTP away from that when there's that tendency to withdraw.
Yep, even force me to do it.
And maybe even force you, right. And I think an ENFJ would be more likely to force an INTP out of that situation than an INFJ would. INFJ would probably just say, all right, you need your space. I'll let you have your space. ENFJ is probably going to come knocking on the door every 5 minutes.
But it works, and it's for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can work out really well for an INTP. I mean, any type that is withdrawing from society, from people, is entering kind of an unhealthy territory. So you do want to have relationships that encourage you to grow socially and things like that. So, yeah. Any other questions before we wrap it up? I think it's been a pretty good session. So, I don't know. Hey, you got anything else?
Yes, No, I don't think I don't have anything else. Those two questions
Well, if you think of
are
it, you
good
can leave it in
enough.
the comments on this video,
Yeah.
and then I'll leave another comment. So, how
Hmm?
about that?
Okay, I will think about it and maybe
Cool.
I'll leave a comment. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Philip. I appreciate your time. I hope it was enjoyable to you. It was a good time for me. So,
Hmm?
I'll post the video up sometime soon. We'll see when I can.
Okay.
And yeah, have a good rest of your evening, or 3 or 4 a.m. or whatever time it is over there.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. Stay safe.
And thank you for your call.
No
I
problem.
had it was not stressful
Oh,
at
good.
all in the end.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
I
Good.
really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. That's good. I'm
Mhm.
glad to hear. All right. Well,
So
cool.
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Bye. Good night.
Have a good night.
It's
Take care.
it's 9 p.m. or something like that there.
What time is it? Here, it is in Chicago area. It is 9 p.m. Yes.
Oh, okay. So good night.
Yep, it'll be
Just to
bedtime
make
for me
sure.
too soon. Yep, as well. All right,
Okay.
take care. Bye bye.